Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the Startup Esports panel. I'm joined by an awesome panel, awesome panelists from all over the country, great CEOs, and one CSO, Kevin. I don't know why you were the odd one out. But before we get started with questions and anything like that, just know that anyone that has questions throughout the panel, feel free to drop them in chat. We'll answer them at the end. And then I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves, starting with Ben, and then I'm going to work my way to Kevin, Zach, and Matthew. But Ben, go ahead.
I think you're muted.
Oh. Yes, we got there eventually. Sorry for that. Hey everyone, my name is Ben Goldhaber. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Juked.gg. I've been working in esports professionally for about 10 years, but started playing games competitively about 20 years ago. So literally my entire adult life has been defined by esports in one form or another, whether there was actual money involved or not. It's been kind of my strongest passion for since I was about 12 years old. So happy to be here, happy to talk about the startup journey, my time at Twitch, or anything else.
Hey guys, my name is Kevin Hoang. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at AcadArena. We're an early stage startup in Southeast Asia, focusing on campus gaming. I've been in gaming and esports for about 7 years. 4 of those years was at Twitch. And yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey everybody, I'm Zach DeFord. I'm the founder and CEO of Smerf. Smerf is a technology innovations company in the gaming space, and we're building some really cool community building platforms with some game studios and helping them identify and support and really, elevate those communities that invest most in their game titles.
Hey guys, hey, my name's Matt Gunnin. I am the founder, CEO of Esports One. I'm a one-up Ben, say that I've been in esports for 11 years and been playing video games for 21 years. So good to be here.
Yeah,
not a competition, Matt, but that's okay.
I'll also intro myself. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ampersand. We're a product studio building tools for creators. We work with a lot of Twitch streamers, Facebook gaming, so on and so forth. And so just building a lot of tools in that space and letting people monetize. And actually, I started my career at Red Bull, one of our sponsors here at the event. So that's really exciting to see them supporting this event here. I guess we're going to get straight into it. We'll start with some questions around like your first steps, what caused you to be in the startup world. So let's start with you, Ben, again. But what was your background in this, like related to startups? You talked about a little bit your esports background. Everyone kind of touched on that a little bit, but where did startups come into play in your career?
Yeah, no, I never really had the intention of working at a tech company or a startup. When I was in college, I was going to university for green technology. At the time, it was the hot thing, and esports was just a passion. So it was not like I was like one of those super driven startup folks that just wanted to get to Silicon Valley. However, my passion for esports allowed me to meet a lot of amazing people kind of throughout the industry. I became really close friends with people like Slasher and DJ Wheat and Sir Scoots, who really opened a lot of doors for me. And I was actually already in the Bay Area. That's where I grew up. And Slasher introduced me to Kevin Lin, who was the COO at Justin TV at the time. This was all the way back in 2010, before Justin TV had spun out Twitch. And they knew that they wanted to experiment in gaming and make a play for esports. But Twitch was no for sure thing at this point. So they brought me into their office to just kind of interview me and ask me questions about esports, about how they could improve their streaming platform for esports broadcasts. And it became really clear really quickly that they were looking for somebody who had connections to the space, understood streaming. And that's exactly what I kind of already had just through my passion and through my side projects that I was doing at the time. So they invited me to join the company about 2 weeks later. So I actually had the opportunity to join Justin TV 6 months before the launch of Twitch. I was on the founding team at Twitch. So at the time, Justin TV was like less than 25 people. So it was a teeny tiny little startup. Very reminiscent of what you see in the show Silicon Valley. It was like a goofy little ragtag group, but we did have catered food and we had a massage once per month. And I'm like, okay, this is it. I not only am I getting paid, but I'm following my passion for esports. And I got kind of sucked into the startup world.
I love it. How long were you there? And like, I mean, we all know that funded life. We'll talk about that a little bit more on some of the funded companies, but how long were you at Twitch total?
I was at Twitch for more than 7 years. So I got to ride the wave from pre-Twitch through the Amazon acquisition in 2014. And then eventually ended up leaving in 2018. And that's kind of when the wheel started to turn on Juked and what eventually we launched in 2019.
Got it. Hell yeah. Well, so another person on our guest that was also former Twitch was Kevin. I mean, as far as I know, Kevin, you were recently into startups now. You haven't been in startups for too long, if I'm not mistaken. Talked about like how that came about and how you got into it.
Yeah. I guess like my first startup attempt was actually had nothing to do with gaming and esports. It was actually when I was 17, 18. I started a nonprofit started a nonprofit that organizes breakdancing battles to raise money for schools in Uganda. I was a terrible student. I was in a very like prestigious high school, and my GPAs were not keeping up with all my peers. And being an Asian American and first generation Asian American, it was just like, oh, I guess like it's not looking too good off this. I'm getting pushed off this cliff after senior year. So I did this charity battle, and I saw that I was able to help build a computer lab in Uganda. And I was like, whoa, I got to actually meet someone that graduated from the school that I helped build. And I was like, wait, this is kind of like nothing makes sense here. And it was just like a whirlwind path from there. I got that kind of helped me land in my first internship at a big company called Microsoft when I was like 18. And I was like, okay, I learned a lot. I got my butt kicked. Like I was the youngest person. I'm pretty sure like half the team members had kids like my age. And I was doing finance, and I don't know why it was a good idea for people to hand an 18-year-old spreadsheets. So I kind of got my hands dirty just doing that stuff. Then I was like, you know what, this gaming and esports thing sounds exciting. So because of the season 2 League of Legends finals in 2014, I was like, you know what, I quit Microsoft to try to figure out this esports things before I can go back to corporate. And then from there, I got reached out on LinkedIn by this guy that raised like $100,000, and he was starting a poker company with esports, and he was going to pay me like $12 an hour to like do stuff with him, like just help him educate what the world of gaming is. I was like, hey, I think this is what it means to be a LinkedIn consultant. And he was in Seattle, and I was like, okay. I joined his startup, and I think it failed in like 4 or 5 months, but I was like, okay, let's just keep the wheels going. And then projects after projects, I decided to go back to and really learn the business of gaming and esports. So Garvey, the director of Twitch Student, which what I was part of for 4 years, offered me a role there, and I was like, okay. I got to be in Twitch for 4 years, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to learn so much more. And then after 4 years, I dove right back in, which is why I came in as a third late co-founder to an early stage startup that we just raised our initial pre-seed round by Hustle Fund and Iterative in Southeast Asia, doing exactly what I was doing at Twitch, kind of, but differences here and there. But it was another attempt at me as a 17-year-old kid organizing b-boy battles because I thought it was cool. So here I am now, 2021. So.
Oh yeah, it's exciting to hear about the fundraising round, and a lot of new things ahead. Awesome. Well, Zach, I think you are the latest new founder out of the group. Talk about how you got into that, because that's, I think, the most recent for you.
Yeah, for sure. A lot like Ben said, I couldn't have ever imagined really doing this. I had no intentions of ever being a startup founder. Never watched the show Silicon Valley once, though I'm told I should all the time. But yeah, I went to college at school. I was studying anthropology, actually. I was studying linguistics and cultural anthropology and philosophy. So my goal was to work in a museum. I was already studying to, working under the director of a museum and curatorial studies and things like that. But I always had a passion for film. So I had an opportunity out of nowhere to actually work for Netflix. So I moved out from Philadelphia to California, went through that process. And during the first season of that show, I actually had some really cool mentors that encouraged me to start my first business, which was a startup making video creative for different tech companies, things like that. And that really cast me into this new world of startups. So I started working with really large tech companies that were doing international things, working with Fortune 500 companies, as well as really small companies. And it was just really exciting to see people figuring it all out. And I got to be around people that started a company, got it to go public, and I saw the excitement, and I started to realize that these are everyday people. You know, a lot of them were learning the same way we were. So always been passionate about gaming. Ended up getting into UI UX for a long time. So I was doing that for about 2.5 years. So I have a really strong product background. And about 2018, we filed some patents, knowing that, you know, we're doing a lot of research in this space, and we saw some white spaces in regards to the backend infrastructure in gaming. So we filed some patents, and then, you know, a couple months later, we entered the world of fundraising, raised our first round, and we went on it full time. So it's been about a year now. It's been a very exciting journey for sure, but not one that I ever imagined jumping into.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to hear some of the things that you have to say in our next question about dumb mistakes as a first-time founder. I had my onslaught of them, but before we get to that, Matthew,
trust me.
Before we get to that, Matthew, talk about how you got into startups. I think you have the longest history out of all of us in that space.
Yeah, I mean, the Esports One is my third startup, but I would say, you know, I didn't really even realize I was an entrepreneur, even really what an entrepreneur. It's kind of strange, you know, hearing all of you guys kind of give your history and your you know, your path to where you're at now. I can relate pretty strongly with kind of, you know, paths that all of you have gone on. Like I was, you know, I founded Leakpedia back in, you know, 2011, ended up selling it way too early, you know, to Curse Gaming, which was then acquired by Twitch. I went on to work at Azubu, you know, at the same time Ben was at Twitch, and, you know, got to kind of be a part of the other side of streaming. But that was where Azubu was probably one of the first times I truly understood what like being a part of a startup was, even if it was sort of the, you know, the negative side of being in a startup, you know, and this kind of goes a bit more into, you know, Azubu's history, but so I won't get into that part. But, you know, I was always a tinker growing up. Like I started little tiny websites, like Gamer to Be was, I think, the first website I can even remember. It was like a Flash-based, you know, website game where I downloaded 25,000, you know, just like Flash games, and I uploaded it to a domain, and then I started putting advertisements on it, and then I started a web hosting company. So I was always a tinkerer growing up, but again, I didn't really understand what the term entrepreneur, like running a startup or running a company was, until Esports One, and have learned a lot through you know, throughout the way. So looking forward to, you know, digging in a bit more there.
Yeah, I definitely I want to talk about that arcade website later, because I did the same thing in middle school. But the cop was that it went around the school firewall for games so that you could access all the games. But yeah, I mean, I think that was the bug when I was 13. Awesome. Well, okay, this gets into like, I think a little bit more fun of a question, which is dumb mistakes. I've had plenty. I still continue to do plenty. And I just want to hear from you guys one dumb mistake as a first time, when you were a first time founder, or even now, that you look back on, cringe on a little bit. Any interesting stories like that? We're gonna start with Ben again. In the next set of questions, I'll work my way backwards from Matthew. But Ben, any interesting dumb mistakes you've made?
Sure. If you go out and look to found a company and you do any research whatsoever at all about how to come up with a good idea, the first thing you hear is you have to talk to a bazillion users and really understand their problems. Not users. You have to talk to people and really understand the problems that keep them up at night, that really, really bug them every single day. But there's another kind of way to come up with a startup idea, which is, hey, this is a problem that I have, and then I'm going to go solve that problem that I have. I am the user. And that was kind of more the route that we took with Juked, where, you know, I am like the 1% of the 1% of most obsessed hardcore esports fans out there. Like I literally watch every single esport. If there's a Rainbow Six tournament, I'm watching. If there's a Street Fighter tournament, I'm watching. If there's a StarCraft tournament, I'm watching. If there's League Worlds or TI, whatever, I'm going to watch it. And for me, the very fragmented nature of esports was a huge problem because it's so difficult to stay in touch with everything that's happening across every single different game. And I felt like we had really good validation that this is like a super intense problem for people, because I continue to talk to dozens, if not hundreds of people throughout my 10 years in esports who have the same pain point. But I realized over time, like I was talking to industry people who worked in this space. Industry people have this problem. If you're a casual esports fan, which 85% of esports viewers are watching casually here and there when they have time, if they see it on Twitch, if they see it on YouTube, they'll tune in. That's the average use case. So I think one of our problems was that I had talked to people, but I didn't really realize that I was talking to people in my circle and that was providing a very colored picture of what was actually happening. Not to say that like our current product isn't super sick, because it is. This week there's like 20 different huge events going on right now. VCT, League of Legends, every single region's going, blah, blah, blah. There's so much going on this weekend. Evo's going on this weekend. We have it all. Awesome. But I think it took a lot of digging to find problems that every esport fan has. And that's really what we're excited to work on next. So I think definitely make sure that when you are talking to people that you're doing it in an unbiased way, because I think that's one problem that we definitely had.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I think that's why there's always going to be space for new startups, especially from like young people and college students. Like they're the closest to the consumer. And like, I think as us as industry people, like over time, you just get detached from that demographic a little bit. And like, as much as we try to stay with it, it's like, it's harder and harder. And so, I mean, there's always going to be space for more startups and more projects. But Kevin, like talk to us about one dumb mistakes you made, and maybe don't try to show your product like Ben, but you totally can too. It's okay.
Why? Well, that's why we're here. No, just kidding.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say like I would echo Ben's point. I think like founders bias and solving for our own use case was definitely one thing. I think the collegiate esports bubble is like a big one that a lot of I've seen myself kind of claw myself out of in the last 4 years was and I realized that I was in this the reflection was like when I was working in collegiate esports, I found a student that was not part of their esports program, but they were just streaming from their own apartment. And I got to work with him a little bit. And then he, in a year, became the number 14th top Minecraft streamer of all time. And he had nothing to do with their campus esports program. And he was paying off student debt already. And I was like, okay, why are we putting a lot of this energy and effort in like helping develop programs when it's like also a leaky bucket because they're not catching the potential? And that was something that I'm oh wow, we should have just talked to more students. I'm like 6 years removed from that space right now in terms of like my age to when I was a graduate. So definitely echoing the literally talking to users and really understanding their day-to-day and their pain points. And I think that's where that was like a mistake in design and an approach that I think that's something that it's a silent mistake that you don't sometimes have to take a step back and kind of look at the forest instead of the trees.
Yeah, no, I mean that totally makes sense. It's definitely a space that I know I've gone down and have had issues like not talking to customers and building their own products. So I totally get that. Zach, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, for me personally, I have like a really strong product background. My co-founder is amazing, versed in tech. So we felt really confident in those two spaces. And when we were going out, business development was really new to us. So to that kind of point of finding your customers and realizing what actually resonates with them, if I really look back to the beginning of this, our pitch might have been 30 minutes. And oftentimes there's about 5 minutes of it that were actually relevant to the individuals we were talking about. So over time, we just got a lot better at figuring out what that 5 minutes was and making sure that 5 minutes was the actual 30 minutes. And we weren't just boring folks. So I look back at some of those meetings where we were over explaining things to people that weren't even relevant to them and kind of cringe a little bit, but it was a great experience. And through that, I think everybody goes through that a little bit, if we're all being honest. Mm-hmm. And, going through that process of business development, talking to so many different customers and learning what those personas are of your users, you'll eventually start to trim down that pitch and know exactly what that person's really interested in and stay there.
Yeah, I think like elevator pitch is so crucial to like nailing not only for potential customers, but investors, employees, like everything's a sell, right? At the end of the day, you're getting people to trust you and invest in you. I'm curious. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but does anyone have their elevator pitch for their company nailed and wants to go right now? You got 30 seconds. Ben, I know you, you love showing your
Matthew
company.
is
I don't know if you want to.
the industry veteran. I mean, as the industry veteran, wouldn't you give us that Esports One pitch?
Yeah, I mean, I can give it right now. We're the at Esports One, we're the first real-time fantasy esports platform that enhances the viewing experience for fans and viewers alike, using dynamic NFTs that gamify through a digital currency and powered by our own proprietary data set. That's more of kind of the high level. Like the lower level one would be a bit more, we're building Esports One for the, we're building Esports One as the first, fantasy esports platform for fans and gamers. And so, in my
I think the second pitch was for everyone, and then the first pitch was like definitely like the buzzword pitch killer.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I mean, that's one thing I've learned, and I will tend to take the other kind of direction here, because we right now is an extremely hot time for raising funding. There's a ton of money being thrown in all sorts of directions, and we were fortunate enough to just recently close a really big round that we haven't announced yet, but we struggled early on. Not struggle, we went through actually a good process early on. Like we went to an accelerator, went up to MIT. We're part of another layer of an accelerator to really kind of just learn how to build a company. But then once we started raising money institutionally and talking to investors, some of the biggest mistakes I made came down to how I personally and how I negotiate with investors. And one thing I've been able to do now is kind of advise a lot of startups and founders, especially when they're going through their fundraising process, of just like small mistakes, telling investors how not having a clear idea of how much money you're wanting to raise or at what value, having like not being in a position of strength of knowing that investor, they need to give you money, and you might need money more than anything else, but it's their, they have to invest that money. And so once you kind of put yourself in that perspective, and that you're not just trying to pitch to someone and basically you're not comfortable asking someone else to invest in you, that kind of opened my eyes to just all these mistakes I've made in the past of really kind of, playing down my level of strength as a founder when I'm presenting to someone, like, and I would just say kind of the biggest piece of advice is when you're pitching your company, trying to raise money, go into the meeting and with the sense of, okay, they need to tell me, they need to present to me why I should take their money. I'm gonna tell them about my company, but it's I'm going to give them the chance to give me an investment. And once you start to kind of take that perspective and approach, especially right now, it will really help to open up the opportunities, especially on a fundraising standpoint.
I mean, from the venture side, money is flowing. And like, I think you hit a lot of buzzwords on that side, where it's like NFTs, crypto, Web3. That's like a huge space right now for money to be pouring in. Esports is
you could be
definitely
running around. Yeah, you could be running around like San Francisco and just saying esports, NFTs, crypto, and people are literally just like trying to write you a check as fast as possible.
Throwing the money.
But also,
I feel like I'm on a Clubhouse chat right now with all these buzzwords.
Like you don't need to be in San Francisco, which is the greatest thing ever. Like I raised my round during the pandemic, 100% on Zoom.
I did too.
And like
Same thing.
it was 80 Zoom meetings, but it was all on Zoom. I was sitting in my little apartment in Dallas, and like that's how I.
We haven't met our
how
lead.
that was structured.
Like I have not met my lead in person, and he's writing like a substantial check, and and so it's a new world that we're living in.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we got some dumb mistakes out there. I'm curious now, like, I think all of us have had also instrumental people in our lives that like have gave us direction. I want to hear about like the mentors. And I mean, I don't think any of us identify our actual true mentors and like call them mentors. I think that like think that I can speak that for most people. But like, who are some people? Like, I can tell everyone this. Like, Kevin was definitely one of those people for me, right? Like, you are one of the people like that helped me guide what I'm doing today. And then, yeah, I'm curious to hear from you guys. Like, who are some instrumental mentors? And they might not even know it. So if you want to give them a shout out, just give them a shout out.
I did not know that. So
yeah.
Aw,
You
so
help?
sweet, guys. I'll say when,
but Ben, go for it.
Yeah, when Matt, when you just kind of mentioned you're mentoring other founders, like that's one of the most amazing things about being a founder and being in the startup community, I think, is that founders help other founders. Like, you learn so much doing this that even though this is my first time, I've been able to help other founders. In fact, I'm wearing the shirt right now, V Shoujo.
I know.
Big shout outs to my homie Gunnin, who was actually the first person I hired when I was at Twitch, or actually at Justin TV back in 2011. If you know Gunnin, let's see it in chat. I think he still has this emote here in Twitch chat somewhere. But he's doing a startup now, and then I can step in and tell him, I made these mistakes when I was incorporating my company. I made these mistakes when in my investor deck. There's the gun run emote in chat. Thank you for that, Connor. But yeah, like, I think founders really help other founders. And for me personally, like, I had just an incredibly lucky set of events that set me on this path that I went through eventually. 7+ years at Twitch allowed me to meet incredible people throughout the industry. I'll shout out to another Kevin Lin, my first boss at Twitch, as being one of the most influential people in my business life. Still today, we jump on the phone every month or every other month to just chat and shoot the shit and just talk about life. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. Apologies for that. But yeah, I don't know. People like Eros from Discord or ex-Discord CMO has been an incredibly influential mentor for me. And Pim, the CEO of Metal.tv, which is another startup in the space, which is doing amazing things right now. I'm sure there's some people in chat who also are familiar with Metal. He's just been an incredible friend and mentor as just another startup CEO that I can just talk to about the stress of fundraising and needing to meet goals and metrics, and just talking about ideas of how they grew and how they're growing so fast and what we can learn from that. So I think mentors come from every side. And I've just been really lucky in my career to have some great ones.
To hear that. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I think my first one is definitely Joel Stolte. He was with the COO of lottery.com. And I remember he was a former breakdancer like me, and he organizes the global dance community. And he was also a Microsoft employee, and he also went to the same college as I did. And he was also a shitty student. I'm gonna swear to.
I broke the seal. You're good.
Yeah, so we're good. And then I was having I think one of the biggest sit down he gave me was like last year when I was unsure about doing startups, and I had a guaranteed. I was gonna take a safer path, which was like, I think tech is too hard. I'm not an engineer. It's like kind of like imposter syndroming myself out of building startups and kind of going, I think I can just do like food and beverage in Seattle and be okay and just be zen and like not have to deal with like esports like craziness. And then Joe sat me down and was like, hey, Kevin, like, you have a seat and like the world's like most exciting timeline. Like, you've worked your way here. You have a front row seat, like, don't waste it. And I was like, oh shit, okay, yeah, you're right. And kind of pushed me back in. And then now in this pre-seed, quickly these the iterative is like a Y Combinator, but for Southeast Asia. So I got to meet again like the founder to founder relationship is like so cool. I got to like hear how other people are solving their problems, or they're kind of like, it's like an MMO. You're like seeing a level like max level character that have kind of done all these different paths of like hiring, engineering management, products, and then marketing. You have these people in like these skill trees, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're teaching me all this stuff. So like Brian Ma, who's like we talk to him every week. He was like early Zillow employee, is now about to take his company IPO at DV Homes, and he's just been a good voice of reason to everything. And definitely shout outs to Garvey, who first took a bet on me in hiring, giving me my first 4 years of like tech and gaming experience. I think without that, I got to see a lot of absolutes in the world. Because I think when we a lot of I got a chance to what I mean by absolutes is like what are the patterns that are gonna happen no matter what, and how do you ride those waves? And being at Twitch, I got to definitely see like one, like what's going on in Twitch, but also like I was pitched by a lot of startups during my role at Twitch. I was pretty front facing, so I got to see a lot of different people's like bets. Like, again, a lot of VC money entering this space, and without the Twitch experience, and I definitely would not have like the mental clarity when I'm on what I'm working on right now.
Can't hear.
Was I muted for a second? I think I might have been muted. Yeah, I was just gonna say it sounded like, I mean, I think Kevin, your experience definitely touched on a lot of parts, and like, I mean, Garvey, and I've met a lot of your mentors as well, and it's been an interesting ride for sure, seeing you like grow out of that. But Zach, what about you? Like, how has mentors changed like your life, and like especially starting a startup recently and like going through that whole process?
Yeah, like really significantly. And I would even go further back. Like, my first mentors, I think, were in middle school, high school. Shout out my chemistry teacher, Rebecca Black, for getting me to settle down, take on more responsibility in life. Ended up, she was one of my first mentors. Then when I got into college, I had additional mentors. So, one of my philosophy professors, Roshi Nagatomo, he was a huge mentor for me, to embrace opportunities that I really didn't see coming. Then once I got out here, I had some really awesome mentors in the business world. So people like Bill Dank, who he created the first international app store. He worked for Apple for a long time. He's like a really amazing product person. He's one of the first people to make iPhone apps. So learning UI UX from someone that had been there in that mobile, first experience from the get-go was amazing. Recently I've had much different mentors. So people that are CEOs of AAA studios, or David Friedman, for example, who's the head of Tech Coast Angels on the venture side of things, where I'm just trying to be a sponge and learn everything I possibly can about every dimension of these things. As a founder and CEO, you find out that there's so many layers of almost everything. You're constantly learning, and as you get to the point where you feel really confident, and then you raise another set of funds, and now you're up here and you're hiring 20, 30 people, and you're dealing with a whole new set of issues. And it's every stage you're going to have new sets of mentors and like a diversity of mentors through that. So I've been really fortunate to have some great ones. And I think anybody that's watching this as students, you can right now, while you're still in college, seek out mentors in your universities and colleges that'll be, really influential, because you want a whole kind of gamut of people with different perspectives, different interests. You don't want just advisors that have a vested interest in your company. You want people that don't have vested interest in your company, that give you kind of more dynamic advice to even protect yourself. So it's a very interesting process. I just encourage everyone to really get as many mentors as you can. Openly seek that out.
Yeah, for sure. I love that one of your first mentors, her name's Rebecca Black, like teacher. But I was like, wait. But
I was holding my tongue so hard on that. So hard.
Yeah. It's appropriate. She got it so much in high school. So shout out Rebecca.
I'm curious,
Black.
you talked a lot about seeking out mentors. How many mentors do you think you've like seeked out, and how many have just come into your life? I think like for me, I haven't really had a phase where it was like seeking those mentors. It's just always like, just ends up we taking interest in each other and like essentially helping each other out and growing from that. So I'm curious about your thoughts about seeking versus like just naturally coming about. Yeah,
I thought it was really interesting when you said like, a lot of times we don't like call those people in our lives that are mentors, but I've always kind of done that in an honorific sense. When people kind of help you out and take on that role, I want to recognize that. So I've sought mentors a long time, but to your point, some of the best mentors in my life, I never in a million years would have imagined that they would have been my mentor. I would have crossed paths with them. And that's a lot of times how it goes. But yeah, for me, it was really seeking out mentors, because I knew the people in my immediate background, my family, they weren't business savvy. I didn't have, a lot of folks in my immediate life that had that background that I was really seeking. So I was encouraged by some great people early in my life to just be willing to go out there and put yourself out there, talk to anybody, ask them questions. And people, when they see you have a genuine interest in things, really do are really open to telling you anything. I mean, when I worked at Netflix, I would be running hard drives with episodes to the post-production house, and I would sit there for 3 hours and just kind of grill and interview the people in the post-production facility about color correction and all this stuff. And I got to meet amazing, like Academy Award-winning 3D art designers and all these people in post-production I never thought I'd come across. And I never thought if you'd sit down with somebody that was like the cinematographer for, Steven Spielberg, that they would give you time. But a lot of times people don't ask those sort of questions. So when you come with genuine questions and a real desire to learn things, you'll find that people are really open to giving you amazing advice.
For sure. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like, I think I've always gone with kind of like a kind soul and was like, hey, like, would love to talk about this expertise you have. And trust me, like when you're a college student, I don't think anyone is going to tell you no. And like, just like, I mean, like, it doesn't hurt to ask. Like, the number of LinkedIn messages, cold emails I had sent out just to talk about something that someone was an expert in, like just to find more knowledge and like find bottlenecks in. I think that changed a lot of things for me. And like, I had one call with them, but I mean, they could technically be a mentor because they nudged my life in a different direction. Right.
One last thing I'll add to this too is with mentors. I mean, one of the best kind of mentors that you can find is the type of person that really wants to help you find other mentors. And they understand that you're going through different stages of your life and they have a large network. They may have worked for a massive company like Apple and they have a much, different network than you do. So people that are willing to connect you with people that can give you the advice you're actually seeking at that time, those are really the most valuable mentors, the mentors that connect you with other mentors.
Yeah. How about you, Matthew?
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts on this because I think it's important to, especially if you're looking to start a company and it's your first time, you're not. It's going to be very rare to have someone that's like your actual quote unquote mentor that you haven't built sort of a past relationship with, and you consider each other friends or are close. You're very close to one another, and they just have more experience than you. Like that's essentially what a mentor is in a in a contextual way. And those are fantastic, but those are also not easy to come by if it's your first startup. What I would say is, you can have kind of your, those you look up to and those that you've worked, and that can come in all sorts of forms, obviously, because it's hard to find, a quote unquote like mentor that is also a founder that has the time, to put aside a few hours a week, to kind of connect and, help solve your problems while you're, with all the problems they have. And so the advice I give is like, for me, so it's kind of two things. I set aside like an hour a week where I have phone calls with other people. I'm not mentoring them. I'm basically just, I'm giving them advice and feedback. And kind of just telling them things that I did at that point, and I try to space that out amongst different people every week. But I think I would advise a first-time founder to go out and look for an advisor, look for someone that you can say, hey, that you built a relationship with, but that also has a vested interest in your company. They will help introduce you and start to build out that network within, with people that you can consider kind of your, that can also be a part of your mentor network. And I think it's also kind of important, like, Ben said, to kind of build your own, your own inner circle of other founders that you can kind of talk to that are also at the same stage as you. But you also need someone that is at a higher stage than you. That's 2 or 3, that's you're running a 20-person company and they're running a 200-person company. And sometimes that requires giving them ownership, a little bit of ownership in your company. And believe me, it's worth it. If that means that you get an hour of their time every week or every couple of weeks to kind of run, things that you don't know what to do about, or like get some input on, how you should counter back on this investment equity that who's for 20% over 3 years. Like, you don't know what the shit that means. So, you need someone that's kind of gone through that experience. And that's kind of how I would say. I would say, networks like these is where you find people that are like essentially your confidants or your colleagues. But go out and find someone that you can, give a little bit of ownership in your company and pin them down as an advisor. I think that's your best opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'll speak on terms of what actionable things that I've done is, being active on Twitter has led to a lot of mentors for me, to be honest. I've met a lot of interesting people through that. And I've never really gone out with the approach of bringing on shareholder advisors. I have those individuals and I know who they are and they are going to get shares. But that's something that's definitely I don't seek out, I guess. Have just been a series of nudges over the years, and those have made long lasting impact that definitely are rewarded in some sense.
I think I know we've been on this topic for a while, but yeah, series of nudges is the perfect way to say it, because some of the investors and advisors that we've eventually brought onto the company, I had probably 7-8 conversations with over the last 3 years. And the first few were just to chat. Then the next few I was trying to pitch them. They weren't that interested. Then eventually they realized that I really, really wanted their help. They could really help me out. And I was listening to their feedback and actually acting on it. And then that was okay, this is worth it. I'm getting the value I need from this. I believe in this guy. So that's how, we've got some of our best advisors just continue to be in contact over and over again.
Sure.
And give them ownership in your company. That's what I'm saying is, there's a lot of people, a lot of people consult for money. And this is basically, you're saying, okay, I value your input. I value, and I want you to be a key part of this, what we're building. Here's 20% over 3-year vesting. And if they don't do anything after 2 months, cut them off.
For sure. We're gonna skip a few questions and jump right into it. We're coming up to the 45 mark. But I want to hear from you guys. Let's talk about more actionable things. As college students, what can they be doing now? I'll speak for myself to start off that I did not finish college. I started my first company in high school. I didn't call it a company back then. It was a project. It turned into a company and I sold it in 2018. And that led me to take a different route other than college. I can't drop out because my parents don't want me to drop out. So I'm technically on my 4th or 5th gap year. I will continue to be on gap years for maybe another couple decades, but I'm not a dropout. A sabbatical, exactly. I will say that one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest thoughts that college kids have is this is a risky avenue to take. You're not getting paid, you're getting paid less, whatever. I would say that college is the best time to start a startup. It's the least risky because what do you have to lose? At the end of the day, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have kids, you don't have anything that you have to take care of for most of us. Some of us do, we have student debt, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's your opportunity or one of your last opportunities in your life to go take random risk and see what works. And I think that's essentially what happened to me is I took a lot of random risks, lots of shots on goal. Something stuck, and it has now given me the chance to keep on doing interesting and weird different things as a career. But I want to hear from you guys, what do you suggest as advice of and maybe tap into the misconceptions of what it means to be a startup entrepreneur, as well as some of the challenges there. But what's some actionable things that students can do today to go down that route if that's something that they want to get involved into? Yeah. So Matthew, if you want to take this one first, I'm gonna call on you first.
I'll keep it short because I think so. Yes, I agree. College is the best time to start a startup. You have more time during the day, during the week, less obligations. Be creating things. It's also the best time for you to surround yourself with others and to basically be interviewing. Who, if you're going to be a startup founder after you leave college, interviewing who's going to be your co-founder and finding those co-founders now. I would also say it's the best time to be surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you, that you can build a network for, because if you start a startup one day and after college, 3 years in, it fails, but your best friend is now a head of engineering at Google or Facebook, and you're like, hey, how's it going? That idea we talked about our senior year project. What do you think about starting it now? And so build those relationships right now. That now is the best time to be doing that.
Sure. How about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of address this question from the angle of considering what it really is to be a startup. For most of us, I think we're trying to do tech related startups and we're raising, venture capital and a couple $1 million rounds, things like that. But I wouldn't just jump right into that. There's a lot of risk there, especially if you don't know all these things about cap table strategy. And there's lots of things that you just learn over time. The first startup, it doesn't necessarily have to be risky. I mean, my first startup took me from delivering subs to a 6-figure salary. So not all startups are the same. You can generate revenue and look at startups like that. What are some things that you could do that can immediately be a revenue generating company? And whether that's professional services or something like that, that's a great place to start, to begin to learn what it's like just to manage other people, to make contracts, to do business development, all that stuff. And it doesn't have to take on the risk of you putting off a nice income and having to raise capital and negotiate with large companies. That can come with time,
Mm-hmm. For sure. Kevin, what about you?
Yeah, I think number one advice is you can hack your learnings right now because the world is so decentralized. I think 10 years ago was a little bit different. There's a lot of social paradigms that I was facing with where doing the normal, going to college was a good thing. It's everyone needs to go do that, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to do that anymore. I think a degree is pretty much useless. I will say that right now. You can learn almost anything on Twitter and on the internet, and you just have to seek the knowledge of, and there's a lot of really good resources out there. My favorite one was Gen Z Mafia is this Discord group for Gen Z that's always building stuff. I follow mostly Naval, who writes a lot of good tweets. I would pay if his tweets had a subscription, I would pay for it. He drops a lot of knowledge all the time. Another startup that just raised $25 million called Maven.com is a cohort-based learning program where you can learn from experts with Legion, who kind of coined the word creator economy, was A16Z, Adrian Howowitz. She has her own 3-week course on the creator economy for $800, which is way cheaper than a college class, right? So you can learn from the best at a way more affordable price point, or learn for free. So I think that's kind of breaking out of the societal norms is is the first step, and be like Matt, be a tinkerer way faster. And I think you can learn so much more so much faster now. And I meet Gen Zs all the time now, developing a Web 3.0, developing their own stuff. If you look at that Gen Z place, they're just working on stuff all the time. So yeah, it's just kind of jumping out of that. And I think the advice in collegiate esports is we're kind of heavily skewed on community and not enough on tech and product. I think if you want to do startups and tech, you're gonna have to seek outside of the molds of collegiate esports. Not to say I think both works. I think for product and tech, there's so many resources that colleges do not provide.
Yeah, learn engineering now. Learn how to use no code. Learn how to build out database apps right now, regardless of where you're going to go in 5 years. If you don't want to ever be an engineer, those are so valuable. Just those small little tinker skill sets.
For sure. I mean, I was one of the founding members of Gen Z Mafia, so I'm glad that you shouted that group out. But Twitter is a great space as well. The no code stuff. 100%. Our website, many other websites built on Webflow. You can now build full web apps on bubble.io. Glide apps, you can literally deploy a Google Sheet into an iPhone app that's a PWA, a progressive web app, in 10 minutes.
There's no excuse to say that you're not an engineer. There's no excuse to say, I couldn't build it because I'm not an engineer.
And for me, I downloaded Figma and picked it up in about maybe 30 minutes. And now I spend about 6 hours a day in Figma, and
do
I lead most of
and
our
I'm not a
design.
designer. And I'm not a designer, and I use Figma nonstop. It is a godsend.
Also,
Knowledge is so
some
undervalued.
student in the chat should pick up Kevin's startup idea he threw out there of Twitter, but with subscriptions, and just try to build that on Figma and no code. It's a great place to
or
start.
Bubble. Yeah. So I also like, if you guys follow me on Twitter and go to my list, I have like a list called Minds, and it's like a stream of people that I find inspirational that tweets like bomb tweets all the time. So I just like follow that, and then they all have Substacks, which is like their paid newsletter, but it's also free. And it's just like going down the rabbit hole of like where they're dumping their information.
Yeah,
and there's so many interesting people. Yeah, in different topics. Yeah,
not to shill my Twitter also, but at the top of my Twitter pinned, it's a list of all these resources that's very collected that I would suggest checking out if you're. There is probably that I've collected over years, probably about 5,000 of them. So.
Yeah, I mean, like the resources are everywhere and available, and like feel free to DM one of us if you have questions about anything. I mean, my DMs are always open. I'll send you different posts, like if that's a wellness category, if that's no code, if that's Web3. I have a list of people that I think you should follow, and that's a great spot to just be for sure.
I think there's a gazillion things I could say on how to start a startup. My personal advice, I don't think there's one correct way to do it. But beyond the logistics of like when to start and how to start and to find a co-founder, I think for me, the most important thing is to just start putting the idea out there. I have never been a person to keep my cards close to my chest. I broadcast them on Twitter as much as I can, as frequently as I can. Because if you do that, then you're going to find people who care about that same problem. And they're going to be attracted to you. That could be your first users. That could be your first investors. That could be your first employees. That could be your co-founder. So I know we only have a little time left for Q&A, so I'm just going to keep it short. But I think talk about what you are doing or want to do early and often. Don't be afraid. If someone tries to copy you, they're not going to do it as well as you. And you're going to have to deal with competitors anyway. Competitors
help, in my opinion. I mean, it guides you and it drives you way more than like being in a space where you think you're just winning all day, every day. But yeah, so I guess we're going to get a Q&A. And I think this is like actually a really good first question because we all talked about fundraising. I think we've all fundraised. Has anyone here done any crowdfunding for a project before?
Ben has.
Juked has, yeah. Juked has. Okay. We did a crowd equity round through Republic. We raised 1.07 million, which was the cap that you could raise through crowd equity. We did that in about 4 months, which was totally insane. I was really excited about crowd equity. I thought if we could raise a couple $100,000, I'd be really stoked. And then we raised $1 million in less than 4 months, which was mind blowing. Of course, then 6 months later, the SEC changed the rules, so you can now raise up to 5 million. I wonder what we would have done if that was the opportunity. Tooting my horn aside, I think crowd equity is awesome, especially if you're a consumer company that people can easily understand. They can get behind the message, they can get behind the vision. For us, like I think saying like ex-Twitch founding member builds new esports company was all we really needed to get a certain type of investor. But yeah, I think it's great. I think everyone should be able to invest in startups. So look, if you're the hottest tech company out there and Andreessen Horowitz is trying to throw $5 million at you at a 80 million valuation, like, sure, you don't need crowd equity. But even then there's like upside to having your community be able to invest in your company. And we really liked that about Republic.
I think something that's bigger that you're going to see over the next couple of years, and I'm working on a few projects in the space. And that's why I've kind of like been interested in this, but I've angel invested in about a dozen companies. And I think the biggest thing I'm seeing now is Web3 DAOs is like opening the door for people now. Customers have ownership, right? Yeah. Like that is going to be huge moving forward. And I think more and more adoption is going to happen as the technology matures. It's super early now, but people are making full-time incomes just participating in the initial phases of DAOs, which are essentially the equivalents of corporations in the Web3 space, which is super interesting. Yeah.
If I could say one thing real quick, because we were almost like we were going to be launching our Republic campaign like the next week, and then we ended up closing the Series A that came together really fast. And it involves us doing an ICO, which is tied into a DAO and tokenizing, which does very much the same thing. So I think there's kind of two facets there. I think crowdfunding is a great option in some forms. I think crowdfunding with a DAO ICO component is even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the second part of that question was, oh, sorry. I don't, but the second part of that question was kind of interesting to me, though. They assume that it hurts their chances of getting VC funding, which I think is actually quite the opposite. I've seen a lot of cases where consumer products would get crowdfunding, and off the basis of the support of that crowdfunding, go directly to a Series A, like a $50-60 million valuation. So in some cases, it actually is amazing.
It depends big time. There are definitely investors. Yeah, there are definitely investors that see that as a negative signal.
Well, and there you go.
That's all you have just bias because, I mean, crowdfunding kind of eats into their ability to invest, right? So it's kind of like a egg and chicken problem. But next question. I mean, like, I think we have 5 more minutes left, so we'll make the most of it to try to answer these questions. But work-life balance. Now, if you ask any of my friends, I don't have work-life balance. I have work-work balance. But I really enjoy my work, so I'm okay with that. And I still find time for fun. Here and there, but I think, like, how do you guys maintain work-life balance, and how does that look like for you guys? I'm gonna have only maybe one or two, or one of you speak on it. So whoever's feeling really compelling answer this question, feel free to take it.
I think it comes and goes. I think sometimes there's a work-life balance. Right now, like, we're in the middle of closing some really big deals, so there's not a lot of work-life balance. But as a founder or anybody that's going to be in an executive role, like, that's really common, and just being ready to embrace the fact that it's going to come in ebbs and flows, and know that sometimes it's not really reasonable, given that you're representing a lot of people's interests, to try and maintain a certain work-life balance. When you have people's livelihood on the line, you can't say, oh, well, it's Friday, I'm checking out. You have a responsibility to kind of do that sometimes.
The one thing I'll say on this point is that it's really important to maintain your own health and sanity. So for everyone, the amount of work that you can do in a day, I think, is probably different. Not everyone can work 14 hours a day. And some people want to work 16 hours a day. But for me, I think getting to bed on time, eating healthy, exercising. I've completely fallen off meditation, but during points in the quarantine, I was meditating as well. And, like, for me, these things are critical, because I went through points in COVID where I was sleeping horribly for like 5 days in a row. I would just, like, get terrible sleep, and it really, 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 really impacts your ability to work. So I think it's really important to have work-life balance, because it makes your work actually more effective, which is a really sad way to think about it, maybe. But yeah, anyway.
No, 100% agree with that. I think that's more and more common with founders of our generation, for sure. So we got 3 minutes left. We're going to answer this last question. I'm gonna say something really quick about it, but esports has been called a $1 billion industry for a long time. I believe it's past $1 billion. Market sizing problem is something that people talk about. I think a lot of entrepreneurship classes in college talk about, you really need to nail your market size. First of all, every real investor will tell you no one cares about market size. I no longer have market size in my decks, to be honest with you. It's just not something that matters. If we look at companies like Airbnb, the founders of Airbnb thought their business had a market size of $30 million. I'm sorry, but Airbnb as a business today is worth over $100 billion. And, like, market size changes, and there's movements, and there's social changes that will completely reorganize and rethink your whole market sizing issue. As long as we know esports is growing and getting bigger, it's the right direction. It just needs to arrow up and to the right to be something that, like, is something that you want to be working on, and, like, that. But if anyone else wants to talk about it,
raise your hand if you've ever put the Newzoo market numbers in your deck.
Oh, do you agree that these numbers are, like, somewhat BS to some degree?
I think everyone likes to give Newzoo crap. I think they're probably, like, better than anyone else out there. So I don't have anything much to say if they're, like, bogus or not. I do think the $1 billion number is vastly, vastly, vastly underestimating the true value of esports. I think esports provides a lot of value to the game publishers that's not being captured in most of these reports. It's marketing, right? Like, if you have 90 million people watching Worlds, then 90 million people, some percentage of those don't play League and might play and spend more. So I think that it's not capturing the value to the publishers, to the game companies. I also think the space that Matthew is playing in of fantasy and betting is not being counted at all. And by a lot of counts, that's in the many billions of dollars in revenue for companies right now. So I think the $1 billion, like esports is a $1 billion industry. First of all, that was like a couple of years ago that I think that was reached in the news reports, but I don't think that tells the whole story even remotely for esports.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's it's a dumb number. It doesn't make any, like, there are reports that if you just combine all the valuations of all the companies, like the top 5 esports teams, they're over $1 billion. Like, all right, so screw the $1 billion thing. But the storyline, if you're pitching investors, is to say, okay, if esports is a $1 billion industry, the gaming industry is a $300 billion industry, and 90% of esports fans are gamers themselves. And so we're capturing that audience because we know that gamers want to spend a lot of money, and they spend $60 to $100 a month, but they're only spending $3 to $5 on esports. And we're building the platform that makes monetizing these gamers in esports better. Like, that's the storyline. So you can take that one or two ways. We know that esports is bigger than $1 billion, but if you can portray it in a certain way, you can get people interested in saying, okay, I see what the problem you're trying to solve.
For sure. Awesome, guys. We're at the end of the hour, so we're gonna wrap this up. Is if you guys want to shout something out, I'll let everyone do a quick shout out. Start with you, Ben. But yeah, go for it.
Oh, quick. Oh man. What you see on Juked GG today, check it out. I want to hear from you, but we're actually building 2.0. So we're getting ready for our app, which is going to be launching. We're going to be alpha testing in as soon as about 2 to 2.5 weeks. And our goal is to create a better way to discuss esports than Twitch chat and Reddit. I know if you're listening to this, you're sick of spam on chat, Twitch chat. I know that Reddit is toxic and hot takes, blah, blah, blah. So we want to create a better vertical social network for esports fans. That's what we're doing with our new app. Look out for it. It's coming soon. You heard it here first because we haven't really publicly talked about this yet. So you're special. And I hope to hear from you.
Oh, yeah. Kevin, go for it.
Yeah, no, if you're interested in Southeast Asia and what we're up to, I know a lot of us are NA audience, I think. So happy to chat and, give whatever lowdown you guys want there. I think it's a really exciting space. We're launching our new product tomorrow. So I'm excited, also nervous, doing development hell. So can relate with you, Ben, on development deployments. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. Thanks, Matt, probably for the awesome talks.
Yeah, Zach, want to hit it?
Yeah, real quick. If you guys head over to LinkedIn, search Smerf, you can follow us there. We're about to make some announcements. We're announcing some new partnerships and investments. We just closed a round, closing another one coming up soon. Got a website coming up. So Smerf at LinkedIn, that's the place to follow us to get all those updates when they come out.
Matthew.
Yeah, just go follow everyone else, the other guys. These guys are awesome. This is a good panel, and no, this is a great group. They're probably more interesting than I am anyway. So
I'm looking forward to hearing more about your Series A. Congrats.
Yeah, that's huge news, man. I'm gonna give a little shout out.
Yeah, I'm getting so much trouble, by the way, for saying that today. But anyway.
Oh no.
No, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
It's fine.
If anyone wants to work with creators or influencers and help make that a compelling career for individuals, we're building a ton of products here over at Ampersand. So just find me on Twitter and.xyz. We're hiring. We have 8 people on our team. We're hiring 12 people right now. So we are doubling down and growing fast. So feel free to shoot me a DM and we'll hop on a call. But
yeah,
no, I'm
intern at companies right now. Intern at companies,
yes.
And it's such a good way.
You will learn.
We love free interns. We'll take as many
10
interns.
times more. Yeah, you'll learn 10 times more interning for a startup than any Fortune 500 company. It might look better on your resume to have them, but trust me, it's not valuable long term. Sorry for any Fortune 500 companies that's looking for interns, but we also pay our interns well. So please come through.
We expect our interns to pay us, so just so everyone knows, you have to pay us.
Reverse internship. It's very interesting.
It's a new one.
Awesome. Well, had a pleasure speaking with y'all, and I can't wait for the after chats and see what else we got to talk about and see all y'all's tweets. But yeah, had a blast, and I think I'll wrap it up and give it off to Uconnect and the team to take it off to the next panel.